You should never expect to buy an audio component that is not tested, vintage or not, and expect it to work. You're 100% wasting your money if you do this. And in this video, I'm going to talk about one of the most important things that I've learned from the decade plus I spent buying vintage audio that will save you money. Let me explain. Now, I've been buying vintage audio over the past decade and have bought thousands of components. And one of the most important things that I have learned that I want to share with you so that you can save money is that you should never buy vintage hi-fi where the audio component is not tested, or even worse, where you're not allowed to test it if you're buying the vintage audio in person. This may sound a little extreme, and yes, there are exceptions, but here's a few key reasons why this should be a general rule. If you love vintage hi-fi or vintage audio, subscribe to this channel, smash the like button, give this video some hype, and go into the comments and join our conversation about this topic, because I read every comment and I love learning from you guys, our community. When people sell vintage hi-fi or list vintage hi-fi for sale and say that the component is not tested, this is a massive red flag. This also goes for people who won't let you test it in person, but we'll cover that and how to prevent it later in the video. Since most people buy vintage audio online, I think it's the most important thing to cover that first. If you go to a description on a vintage audio component and it says not tested, just get all those, what if it works? What if I'm getting a deal? What if I don't buy it and someone else does and they get this massive deal? Get all those thoughts out of your head. Look, nobody is saying not tested on vintage audio components if there's a chance that they work. People want the most money out of things they are listing. Again, there are exceptions to the rule if you're someone who repairs things yourself, which you should also still be cautious. If you don't understand why it doesn't work, even if you are a repair expert, buying vintage hi-fi like this could cost you much more money than you originally expected. Generic testing of vintage audio is pretty easy. You plug it in, maybe you connect it to other components, and if it plays sound, in theory, it works. Hear me out. Now, yes, after that, there's several tests that you could run, but in most cases where someone doesn't want to do that or doesn't know how to test the component, they'll say plugged it in, it powers up, and plays audio. No further testing was done. Okay, so this tells you A, it powers up. B, it works to some extent. And I mean, this stuff's vintage, so you can't expect it to work like it's new. And C, if there's a major problem, at this point you're probably going to be able to return it. Now, the exception may be if they list it for parts or repair, and if that's the case, I have another video that I'll link to up here on my channel that goes into detail on why you should never buy parts or repair vintage audio anyway, so watch that for more advice on why you should never buy vintage hi-fi that's for parts or repair. This is all part of my new free guide that I wrote for buying vintage audio, and it's from over 10 years experience of buying it daily, thousands of units. Think of it as a cheat sheet for any red flags to look out for when buying vintage hi-fi. It's designed to save you, my community, money, because I've just seen way too many people over the years waste money on vintage audio, and it all or most of it could have been prevented. Now, in buying vintage audio, you need to be able to at least have some confidence that the vintage audio component works. Now, this could be in the form of pictures of it turned on, specific details of its performance, asking the person, hey, does it work? I mean, all of these components are vintage, and there are perceived risks involved no matter what. Now, right now, most of these vintage hi-fi components are 25 to 50 years old, and honestly, they weren't designed to last forever. Well, with the exception of the products made in Japan, they take so much pride in perfecting their components. With the right care, they will last way longer than anything else. One thing you can do to rule out if it really doesn't work well without you being there to physically test it is to ask questions to the seller. A seller who has a working stereo component is going to answer your questions the best that they can. They may not always be able to answer everything you ask. I mean, maybe they aren't into hi-fi or they're selling it for someone else. But they should at least respond with an answer or by telling you the things I just mentioned. A seller that can't take the time out to respond at all is usually hiding something. They don't want to respond because they don't want you not to buy it because they said something wrong, or they don't want a paper trail for evidence if you want to return it. You should also watch out for the famous phrase, "It powers up, but there's no audio." Now, the same type of thing applies in person, and this is extremely important. You need to remember these two important things. These are crucial. You will get burned if you're not careful. Be sure, and look, this goes for any pre-owned audio purchase, whether it's vintage or more recent, anything pre-owned, right? That you have a return window. Look, any return window is good. Even an exchange window will work, but there's more on the line there because if the one unit doesn't work and you have to buy something else, typically there's a chance you might have an issue with that as well. Anyway, ensuring you can take the component home and test it, then if it doesn't meet expectations, bring it back and get your money back is one of the most important things when buying vintage audio. And I've seen this firsthand. I've been places that have had final sale policies and people would have issues. So they would bring the unit back in. So now we're talking time, and it caused a horrible experience for not only that customer, but the business as well. See, the customer would be out their money and their time and be upset, and the business in return would get a bad review. And even worse, they would get a bad reputation. So avoid buying vintage audio in final sale scenarios no matter what. Or at least know the risk in doing so. The longer the return window, of course, the better. And I've seen countless vintage audio components sit on shelves for years after servicing. They may test fine at first, but problems quickly develop over the next coming days or weeks or even months. So have a safety net. This is like insurance. And for being in the industry, buying and selling vintage audio for years, this, when in an in-person scenario at a store, it's a non-negotiable. Now, of course, I know what you're saying. If you buy something in a private sale, an estate sale, or a flea market, you should understand the risk because you're not going to be able to return it. It's probably cheaper price, and you can expect to return it because it's not a store, right? So that's the exception that is also another risk. Even in these scenarios, I would ask the person if you could plug it in. There's no reason you shouldn't be able to do this unless you're at, let's say, a public flea market in a park or there's no power anywhere. If you're at a yard sale, that person probably has power to hook it up outside their house. If you're at a store, there's obviously power. And in the case that you're meeting someone in a parking lot at a Walmart, I mean, there's power around there. I'm telling you, there is. For instance, if you're buying it off Craigslist, meet somewhere where you can power it up. Somewhere around the parking lot or business or public place you're going is going to have power. So arrange it in that way. But what if the power cord is broken? Look, I've seen this 1,000 times. A listing where an audio component is pictured with a cut power cord. And let me tell you, the seller cut the cord. They will say things like, I had to cut it to remove it from the system, or some excuse like that. Don't believe that for a second, okay? 99% of cut cords are because the seller knows there's a problem and they don't want you to be able to test the component at all. So avoid these listings. And honestly, avoid these sellers. Damaged power cords rarely happen, but to have a full cut, that's even more rare. And I personally would give you the advice, just don't mess with that seller or that unit at that point. There's an obvious problem. Unless you're like up for a challenge to fix it. If you remember one thing from this video, it should be this. This last piece of advice is crucial. And I know I already said that, but it really is. And it summarizes this entire video up. If you remember one thing from this video, it should be this. If you aren't allowed to power it up and at least test that, or the seller won't plug it in and send you a picture, I would strongly advise that you not buy it. Unless you're okay wasting money, in that case, it's okay, do whatever you want. Or if you want the challenge to fix it, knowing that you could be in over your head if you're not very experienced. And even if you are experienced, you could run into some major problems. Now, sketchy sellers come in all forms and will make all kinds of excuses and give you reasons that they won't let you test it. Any seller that is not upfront and honest is a major red flag when buying vintage audio. Guys, I hope you enjoy the vintage audio advice that I've been giving. I want to help you guys out in your journey as much as I can. So this is our community. I love vintage audio and I love new audio as well. And that's what I sell now. I sell new audio at alleliteaudio.com. We also have that free guide that you can download on all the red flags when buying vintage audio, completely free. Check that out. But if you're looking to pair something with a vintage receiver, you're just looking to get a new system, go check out alleliteaudio.com. Me and my team will help you guys out like we have for the past several years.